There's a moment you've lived before the room is warm, the conversation easy, and someone across from you seems to understand you down to your bones. You laugh. You share a detail you rarely share. Later alone, a knot forms something they said didn't quite honor what you revealed. It isn't proof. It's a tremor. The Stoics would tell you that tremors matter not because you must panic, but because perception sharpened by reason keeps you free. You won't spend your life suspicious of everyone. That's not the point. The point is that some people delight in the disturbance they cause. They grin at the toppled glass, shrug at the mess, and say you're too sensitive when you notice the pattern. Evil in Stoic terms isn't a horned creature. It's character misaligned with virtue, impulse over reason, domination over justice, appetite over self-control. Today, you learn to watch to name and then to act without fury. You'll see how charisma can be theater. You'll see how empathy, when missing, leaves a cold draft in every room. You'll recognize the soft hands of manipulation, the tightening loop of control, the glittering threads of lies. And you'll practice the discipline that Marcus urged not to hate, but to discern. Not to dramatize, but to govern yourself. By the end, you'll carry something sturdier than suspicion. You'll carry tools that keep your peace where it belongs in your command. This isn't curiosity for curiosity's sake. The quality of your days depends on the quality of the company you keep. The Stoics placed perception at the front gate of the soul. If you see truly, you choose wisely. If you see poorly, you hand over your serenity to anyone who wants it. So here's the road. You'll walk 5 signs that reliably reveal a misaligned character, and then a practical, do-it-today boundary move that doesn't require shouting threats or revenge. You'll keep your dignity in your own hands. Stay through to the end. The bonus is small in words and heavy in effect. Sign 1. The charming façade that eventually cracks. Music hums, glasses clink, and someone brightens the entire scene simply by speaking. You feel seen. They remember names, finish jokes, and tilt the spotlight so it lands on you until slowly it doesn't. Watch the ratio. In the beginning, they amplify you. Soon after, they orbit only themselves. When the crowd leans in, they lean further, talking over softer voices, trimming your sentences, mid-air, slipping barbs, disguised as wit. You catch yourself laughing at a line that on the drive home stings. The Stoic move here isn't to condemn charisma. Charisma can be noble when yoked to virtue, but to test impressions over time. Epictetus would have you separate first appearances from settled judgments. Let the performance run. Does their warmth evaporate when admiration cools? Do they handle no with grace, or does their face harden, their voice sharpen their memory? Suddenly forget your kindnesses. A stable character absorbs disappointment. A brittle one retaliates. Picture the subtle pivot. Early on, they ask your stories. Later, every road bends back to theirs. Your good news becomes their stage to retell their better news. Your concern becomes their cue to showcase a bigger hurt. And when your attention lingers elsewhere, irritation flares. Marcus would call that a symptom of slavery to applause, to control, to the audience's gaze. Your safeguard is apatheia, not apathy, but a steadiness unhooked from their charms. Keep your emotional keel even. Don't rush. Let patterns accumulate like brushstrokes. How do they treat the waiter when no one is watching? How do they speak of friends who aren't present to defend themselves? The façade can shimmer for a night. The nature beneath will declare itself across weeks. You don't need a confrontation to see it. You need patience, a notebook of small, remembered moments, and the self-respect to believe what those moments add up to. Sign 2. The chill where empathy should be. Mornings tell the truth. You bring them a quiet sorrow, an illness in the family. the fatigue you've been hiding and the room should warm. Instead, the temperature drops. They minimize, mock, redirect, or treat your pain like a prop for their monologue. Later, when joy finally visits you, they don't celebrate. They compare. Your victory becomes their grievance. The Stoics never mistook compassion for weakness. Marcus writes, as if every person shares one breath. Harming another is self-harm by extension. So when someone repeatedly refuses the basic human exchange, I see you, your feeling matters that is not a quirk. It's a cardinal orientation away from justice. At work, it looks like a manager who squeezes hours until morale breaks, who withholds time off and calls public shaming feedback. In friendships, it's the chronic interruption, the missing. How are you, the vanished offer of help when help is clearly needed? None of these moments alone proves malice. Together, they sketch a map. Stoic practice asks you to observe without becoming embittered. Hold your standard, you can be kind without allowing yourself to be used. Boundaries here are not punishments. They are definitions of what you accept, of what you won't loan out anymore, your time, your energy, your self-doubt. You do not plead for empathy from a person who refuses to give it. You reduce your exposure and reclaim your strength. Seneca would call that justice toward yourself. If you keep second-guessing your right to be treated well, remember virtue is reciprocal. Where empathy is chronically absent, cruelty can grow unchallenged. You are not obligated to stand in that weather. Sign 3. Manipulation. There is a peculiar kind of fatigue you feel when dealing with a manipulator. It isn't the exhaustion of long hours or physical labor. It's the subtle erosion of your clarity. One moment you're certain about what happened, and the next you're wondering if you misremembered, overreacted, or even lost your grip on reality. This is the battlefield where manipulators thrive not by brute force, but by bending perception until you question your own. The Stoics would tell you that perception is sacred. Epictetus repeated this truth again and again. External events matter less than the judgment you pass upon them. If your judgment is corrupted, if someone has wormed their way inside and blurred the lens, you lose the very freedom the Stoics labored to preserve. Manipulation is at its core an attack on your reason. Gaslighting is the manipulator's most insidious tool. You recall a conversation where they cut you with words. Later, when you carefully bring it up, they deny it ever happened. They twist their tone, tilt their head, and imply your memory is fragile. You begin rehearsing events in your mind, trying to piece together proof, but proof is slippery when someone so confidently rewrites the past. The Stoics urge you to slow down, to separate your inner judgment, which belongs to you alone, from the shifting narratives they throw into the air. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But manipulators prey on that very imagination, planting seeds that bloom into confusion. Another tactic, playing the victim. You've met it before. The friend who arrives with endless complaints, each more urgent than the last, until you feel guilty for having your own needs. They sigh that no one else understands them the way you do. They lean heavily, demanding time, money, favors, but vanish when your hour of need arrives. Their refrain is always the same. If you really cared, if you were truly a friend. Stoic philosophy gives you a steady answer. Your care must be guided by reason, not by chains of guilt. Epictetus taught that what is not within your control cannot be your burden to carry. Another's endless despair, staged as a weapon, is not your responsibility to solve. Flattery, too, can be a chain disguised as a crown. At first, their compliments feel like sunlight. You feel recognized, valued, even elevated. But watch closely. Does the praise come when they want something? Do the compliments vanish when you stand firm only to reappear when you bend? Genuine affirmation flows freely and needs no repayment. Manipulative flattery arrives with strings attached, and those strings tighten when you resist. The Stoics remind you that your worth does not live in anyone's lips. True self-respect is independent of applause. If someone uses charm as currency to purchase your compliance, the transaction is corruption, not care. Manipulators often work by narrowing your world. They might whisper doubts about your friends. They don't truly care about you or cast shadows on your family. They don't understand you like I do. The intention is simple: isolate you, reduce your allies, make themselves your only reference point. Seneca advised choosing companions carefully, but he also insisted on plurality. Human beings thrive in communities of virtue, not under the monopoly of a single dominating influence. When you find your circle shrinking, your ties loosening under another's persuasion, stop and ask, whose interest does this serve, yours or theirs? Financial manipulation can be even more binding. Picture the partner who insists on controlling the accounts, giving you an allowance, making you ask permission for every small purchase. On the surface, it may look like efficiency or care, but underneath lies a tightening grip on your independence. The Stoics equated freedom with self-sufficiency. The more you depend on another's approval for your basic needs, the less freedom you possess. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that wealth was not evil, nor poverty good, but dependency, especially enforced dependency, was corrosive to the soul. What unites all these tactics, gaslighting, victim-playing, flattery, isolation, financial control, is that they cloud your perception and weaken your confidence. A manipulator thrives not because they are stronger, but because they persuade you to doubt your own strength. And here, Stoicism offers a lifeline. Return again and again to what is within your control, your reason, your clarity, your response. You may not stop them from twisting words, but you can refuse to abandon your memory. You may not silence their guilt trips, but you can recognize the hook and decline to bite. You may not prevent their flattery, but you can remind yourself that virtue is not for sale. The practice is vigilance without paranoia. It's standing inside yourself like a fortress, not with walls of bitterness, but with gates of discernment. You let kindness in you welcome sincerity, but you bar entry to deceit. And when manipulation tries to creep through disguised as care, you name it. You breathe. You stand firm. The Stoics never promised a life free of toxic people. What they promised was freedom from enslavement to them. To live aligned with reason and virtue is to see clearly, to resist distortion, and to preserve your peace even in the presence of those who seek to unravel it. And when you finally step back from a manipulator's orbit, you'll feel it, the sudden lightness, the return of clarity, the rediscovery that your mind is your own. That is Stoic victory, not triumph over others, but mastery of yourself. Sign 4. Controlling behavior. There is a difference between care and control, though at first it can be hard to tell them apart. A controlling person often cloaks their dominance in words that sound protective. I only want what's best for you. Trust me, I know better. At the start, it feels comforting, someone taking the weight of decisions off your shoulders. But slowly, you realize the comfort is a cage, and the key is not in your hands. Control is not always loud. Sometimes it begins quietly with choices that seem small, where you go for dinner, who you spend time with, how you use your free hours. You brush it off. After all, compromise is part of every relationship. But compromise is mutual. With a controlling person, the pattern leans one way, and before long, your preferences are drowned out. You notice your voice fading in the partnership replaced by the constant refrain of theirs. In intimate relationships, control grows sharper. They want to know where you are not once in a while, but at every hour. They demand access to your phone, your passwords, your private thoughts. What masquerades as closeness is surveillance. You begin to edit your behavior out of fear, avoiding conflict, monitoring your words, shrinking your world, so as not to ignite their suspicion. This is not love. This is domination. The Stoics would see this clearly. For Epictetus, freedom was not negotiable. It was the foundation of a virtuous life. To surrender your autonomy is to betray the very part of you that reason is meant to protect. He taught that no tyrant could truly enslave a wise person because the wise guard their inner freedom above all. But when you allow another to dictate your choices, your company, your thoughts, you surrender that sovereignty. Control can extend beyond the emotional into the financial. A partner or family member might take charge of every dollar, insisting you are not good with money. At first, it might feel efficient, even responsible. Yet soon you find yourself having to ask permission for what is yours by right. The Stoics regarded wealth as indifferent, not good or evil in itself, but they warned against dependency. When another holds the purse strings of your life, your choices narrow until they can be bent at will. That is not indifference, it is enslavement. Isolation is another weapon. A controlling individual may chip away at your connections, whispering that your friends don't truly care, or that your family doesn't understand you. They plant doubts until you begin to believe them. Over time, your circle thins, your lifelines vanish, and you become more reliant on the controller than ever. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire yet saw himself as a servant of the whole, would have condemned this. Humans are made for community. To sever you from it is to weaken your strength and stifle your growth. And sometimes control escalates into threats. If you leave me, I'll hurt myself. If you disobey me, I'll walk away, and you'll have nothing. These words are designed to place fear in your heart, to freeze your will, to make you accept what you should never accept. Seneca wrote that fear is the weapon of tyrants, and that the free person is the one who refuses to live in its shadow. Courage for the Stoics was not the absence of fear, but the refusal to be ruled by it. If you find yourself under this kind of domination, the Stoic way forward is clarity and boundaries. Recognize the difference between genuine care rooted in respect for your choices and control which crushes them. Set limits on what you will tolerate. Reclaim decisions, however small, that belong to you. And if resistance provokes hostility, know this: walking away is not cowardice. It is fidelity to your own nature. The Stoics remind us that no external power, no matter how loud or close, can reach into your reason without your consent. Your task is not to change the controller, that is their battle with themselves. Your task is to guard your freedom, to refuse to hand over the reins of your life. Because once you see control for what it is, not love, not protection, but theft of autonomy, you are already stronger than it. And when you step beyond the reach of that control, you rediscover something vital: your ability to choose. Where to walk, whom to trust, how to live. That freedom is not a gift from others. It is your birthright, and the Stoics would tell you it is worth defending with everything you have. Sign 5: Pathological lying. There's a heaviness that comes from living in a fog of lies. At first, it's barely noticeable, a detail here, an exaggeration there. Someone claims they achieved something grand or alters a story to make themselves look more impressive. You smile and let it pass. But with a pathological liar, the fog thickens until you can no longer tell where truth ends and invention begins. And in that haze, trust your compass begins to break. The Stoics valued honesty not just as a social virtue, but as the very structure of a rational life. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that to live in accordance with nature was to live in truth, because nature does not lie. Clouds form, rain falls, rivers move. Reality presents itself plainly. To distort it is to live out of harmony both with the world and with yourself. A person who lies habitually chooses a path that runs directly against the Stoic way of virtue. At first, pathological lying may even seem harmless. A friend tells a story with embellishments funnier, grander, more dramatic than it really was. You laugh thinking it's just flair, but as time passes, the stakes rise. The lies cover up mistakes, deny wrongdoings, or paint others in a false light to shift blame. Soon, you realize you're no longer in a friendship, but in a theater where one person endlessly scripts and re-scripts reality. Consider the workplace. A colleague claims credit for work that isn't theirs. They whisper false rumors that tarnish reputations. They exaggerate their role in successes and vanish when accountability comes. What results is not just personal frustration, but an environment poisoned by suspicion. People stop trusting one another, progress slows, and the whole group pays for one person's fabrications. Seneca warned that deceit corrodes community because it robs people of the basic fabric that binds them confidence in one another's word. In personal relationships, the damage cuts deeper. Imagine a partner who constantly lies about where they've been, who they've spoken to, what they feel. You start to doubt your own instincts, replaying events in your mind to figure out if you've been tricked. Sometimes you catch them, but instead of owning up, they double down, stacking one falsehood on another until the truth is buried under layers of invention. Epictetus would tell you this is a tactic of enslavement. When you begin to question your own memory, you become pliable, easier to control. What makes pathological lying so destructive is that it often mixes truth with deceit. A liar may include accurate details in their stories, so you'll swallow the rest whole. They say enough that is believable to smuggle in what is not. You become entangled, uncertain, and weary. And that's the point. Confusion is their tool. A clear mind is your defense. The Stoics instruct you to slow down, to test words against evidence, to refuse to accept claims without grounding. Vigilance is not paranoia, it's discipline. When you catch a lie, notice the reaction. A virtuous person admits fault and seeks correction. A pathological liar deflects blames or attacks. They accuse you of being paranoid, overly sensitive, or even cruel for questioning them. This doubling down is a sign not of strength, but of cowardice. Marcus would say, "If it is not true, do not say it. If it is not right, do not do it." The liar does both, says the false and does the unjust. Over time, the real cost of pathological lying is trust. And trust, once broken, rarely returns intact. You find yourself second-guessing even genuine words. You wonder if you've been deceived again. Suspicion grows, and with it, resentment. The Stoics, committed to clear relationships built on mutual respect, would urge you to weigh whether such a bond can still be called a friendship, a partnership, or anything worthy of your loyalty. The response is not rage that only entangles you further. It is clarity and boundary. You can tell yourself, "I will not allow another's dishonesty to corrupt my peace. I will stand firm in my own truth. And if they refuse to change, I will walk away, because integrity is too valuable to be traded for proximity." Pathological lying is one of the clearest signs of a corrupt character. It is not merely an occasional fault. It is a way of life. And when someone has chosen that way, the Stoic response is steady: guard your reason, protect your peace, and stay loyal to reality. For reality, unlike deceit, is always enough. Bonus: setting boundaries, the Stoic way. Think of boundaries not as walls, but as lines drawn in the sand at the shoreline. The tide may try to wash them away, the waves may crash against them, but if you return with clarity, you can draw them again, firm, steady, unmistakable. Setting boundaries is not about shutting out the world. It's about refusing to let the world trample over what is essential to your peace. The Stoics saw the self as a citadel. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that no one could truly invade his mind without permission. But in practice, permission is often given silently through tolerating insults, excusing manipulation, or allowing disrespect to pass unchecked. Boundaries are your way of revoking that unspoken permission. They are a declaration, this is mine. My time, my energy, my dignity. They are not for misuse. To set boundaries, begin with clarity. Not just clarity for others, but for yourself. What behaviors disturb your peace? What actions leave you diminished? Without naming them, you drift in confusion, reacting only when the discomfort becomes unbearable. The Stoics would urge you to observe with precision like a physician diagnosing a wound. If a friend belittles you in public, do not dismiss it as humor if it corrodes your spirit. If a colleague exploits your willingness to help, do not call it teamwork when it is exploitation. Clarity means calling things by their rightful names. Once you see clearly, you must speak clearly. Ambiguity is the ally of those who cross lines. A boundary set in silence is no boundary at all. Epictetus taught that communication, when guided by reason, must be direct. You don't need cruelty. You need firmness. I value our friendship, but I will not accept being spoken to with disrespect. Simple, unadorned, like a blade without ornament sharp enough to cut confusion. Consistency is where most falter. It is easy to state a boundary, once harder to uphold it when met with pushback. And pushback almost always comes. Manipulators scoff, controllers grow angry, liars deflect. They test the line, hoping it will fade. But the Stoics believed that discipline ascesis, the repeated training of the soul, was the true test of character. When your boundary is crossed, reaffirm it without rage, without apology. Like a stone unmoved by the current. Each time you hold steady, you teach others how to treat you. Each time you bend, you teach them the opposite. Boundaries also require consequences. To state a line and accept its violation is to weaken your own word. Seneca warned that words without action breed contempt, both from others and from yourself. If disrespect continues, you distance yourself. If manipulation persists, you reduce contact. If dishonesty becomes the air someone breathes, you step out of their atmosphere. This is not punishment, it is self-preservation. You do not control their choices. You control your proximity to those choices. In the workplace, this might mean calmly declining extra tasks once your plate is full. I cannot take on additional work beyond my current responsibilities. It may feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is the price of integrity. In friendships or family, it might mean excusing yourself from conversations that devolve into mockery or control. I will step away if this continues. These are not threats. They are promises kept to yourself. Yet even as you draw lines, the Stoics remind you compassion remains possible. You can set boundaries without hatred. You can withdraw without bitterness. Marcus wrote that when people act unjustly, it is because they do not know better. That truth does not erase the harm they cause, but it softens your own heart, preventing poison from seeping in. Boundaries are not revenge. They are alignment with virtue. And do not forget self-care. Boundaries hold only if the citadel within is strong. Rest, reflection, nourishing friendships, time in silence. These are the bricks that reinforce your walls. Epictetus told his students to care for the self as a duty, not an indulgence. Without tending your own strength, you become vulnerable to those who would erode it. The hardest part may be the losses. Some will not respect your boundaries. Some will leave when you enforce them. This is the price of peace. The Stoics would say better to lose those who corrupt your soul than to lose the soul itself. By choosing your associations wisely, by keeping company with those who honor your lines, you create a circle where virtue can flourish. When you stand in the practice of boundaries, something changes. You stop begging for respect and begin expecting it. You stop explaining why you deserve peace and start living as though peace is non-negotiable. And those around you learn, some quickly, some never, that your life is not open ground for their storms. The tide will always return, but so can you. Each time firmer, each time clearer, each time more certain that the boundaries you draw are not signs of weakness, but of the deepest strength. When you reach the end of this path, you see something the Stoics saw clearly. The greatest danger is not the evil of others, but what that evil awakens in you. To answer manipulation with rage, to mirror lies, with lies to meet control with cruelty, this is how your peace is lost. Their corruption becomes your corruption. Instead, the Stoics call you to a higher discipline, clarity without contempt, firmness without drama. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the wrongdoer does wrong because he does not know better. You may not excuse the harm, but you refuse to let it twist your own soul. This is why you draw boundaries, not to punish them, but to protect yourself. Not to dominate, but to preserve freedom. You will meet people who disguise their harm beneath charm, who withhold empathy, who weave manipulation, who tighten control, who layer lie upon lie. Their presence is real, but your response is yours. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." If you keep your judgment steady, if you guard the fortress of your mind, you remain untouchable. And remember, the Stoic path is not about suspicion, nor about living guarded forever. It is about discernment, knowing whom to trust, when to step back, and how to keep your inner freedom no matter what storms gather outside. Seneca taught that the wise person chooses companions as carefully as a sailor chooses a ship. Not every vessel deserves to carry you across the sea. So walk forward with clear eyes. Be generous where virtue lives, and unyielding where deception thrives. When you must step away, do so without bitterness. When you enforce a boundary, do so without noise. In this, you embody the very heart of Stoicism, a life not ruled by others, but ruled by reason, guided by virtue, anchored in peace. In the end, the true victory is not exposing an evil person or defeating them in argument. The true victory is preserving yourself, your clarity, your dignity, your serenity. Evil seeks to disturb. Your task is to remain undisturbed. And when you succeed, you discover a freedom greater than escape, the freedom to live in harmony with yourself, untouched by their chaos, steady as a stone in the current.